This review was a follow-up to my my first review of AD&D Heroes of the Lance, or Dragonlance, the first game for the NES, which is quite frankly one of the most broken, unplayable RPGs I've ever seen. So when I picked up this one, I really was not expecting much more, although I was pleasantly surprised. This is one of the few times I've ever actually given a fairly borderline positive review of a game. This is also one of the only games I do not own. In fact, I don't think this game actually exists in the literal sense. At least not, I don't think it was ever released in the United States. This version in particular is a ROM that I downloaded. And I think it's a translation, like a fan translation. So somebody actually put some effort into translating this to English and editing the game file. So if this exists, it's probably only in Japanese, but I don't really care enough to look into it. But even though this is far and away much better than Heroes of the Lance, just in terms of it having color, it is still absolutely terrible. In that, when you actually look at it, it has two real elements. It has the side-scrolling fighting, and it has the maze-type action. So it's really among the most rudimentary gameplay possible. And the very fact that it works, as in when you hit something with your sword it takes damage, the very notion that that works makes it far and away better than Heroes of the Lance, and that you can play it, you can beat it, and you don't feel shafted out of the experience when you're done with it. But still, it's very basic. I mean, the majority of the game is simply navigating a maze. That's it. So there's really not much to it. You're listening to the same music over and over. Every time you run into a monster, you fight the same monsters over and over. If not for the very lightly sprinkled theme of Dragonlance over it, in which case I don't really even think it follows the books that closely, in that I think you kind of go to the same locations, but beyond that, I really don't think you fight dragons at this point in the series. I don't think they're weak to magic missiles. You know what I mean. So actually, I had to cut this review kind of short, because for one, it's very similar to the first game, only it's actually playable, and it's kind of hard to bash a game for being playable. I was actually kind of positive on this one, so I just had some fun with this game. I had some fun making the review. Just kind of bashed it on things that can really start nagging at you over time. For instance, these mazes are just massive. And I think the main problem with this game is that once you know the way through, once you've mapped it out, you've played through it once, you'll basically never, ever touch this again. Again, I think a real problem I have is when you pay full price for a game that, if you know how to play it, will take you maybe 15 minutes to finish. I kind of take issue with that. If you're going to have a game that can be played through exactly one time, and that's not a problem, but if you're going to do that, you'd better make the experience worthwhile the first time through, and that's just not, that you don't get that here. You just wander through these endless mazes, and you really have no idea where to go, and the gameplay just isn't worth it. But if I have much anger towards this game, it's because that I am a Dragonlance fan. Even as a kid, I read those books like crazy. In fact, I probably read way too much of the Dragonlance books long after they started being not so good, you know. For instance, I think the first probably 6 to 9 Dragonlance books, like the Chronicles, the Legend series, I think it's called Test of the Twins or something like that, those are really some of the best fantasy literature you're going to get. In fact, I think it plays out rather like a D&D game. And from what I think the rumor is that actually I think the two authors really just novelized their actual D&D game, which is kind of brilliant. And it actually kind of makes sense, because there's weak points in the Chronicles series. Like, certain characters will get killed off, or they'll make kind of stupid decisions, and you're kind of like, well, that would happen in a D&D game, so you kind of like it. I really like the series, and I kind of fell out with it as soon as they... when did I stop reading the Dragonlance novels? It was, I think it was called The Fifth Age, when there was kind of a major upheaval in the game world where they they tried to hand the reins off to a younger generation, kind of the second generation of heroes, that were descended from the original line of heroes. Like, they all had children, or they all met new people, and, they kind of they passed the torch. The gods of the world left, and for me, it just became really, really boring. I didn't have the same emotional investment in those characters, and I just don't think I ever really gave it a chance. Plus, I just kind of found other things to read. I was kind of burned out on Dragonlance, but I always tried to get a Dragonlance game going, as in a Dungeons & Dragons game going, where we would actually play in that series, because you've probably seen in my room, I have a ton of D&D books, but you don't get to use them all that much, unless you have a really kind of a group that likes to play a lot. So, when it comes to Dragonlance, people actually have a very negative opinion of that game, because I've never actually seen the Dragonlance game go well. I've DM'd a few, and I've played in a few, but the problem is that they don't really go well, because one person will invariably choose to play a Kender, and if you don't know what a Kender is, they're kind of like hobbits, only far more annoying, in that every Kender in the world is a raging kleptomaniac. They will steal anything. And I think the real problem is nobody knows how to play a Kender right, or at least none of the people who have played Kenders, who are attracted to playing Kenders, know how to play Kender right. In that they often have their characters stealing valuables from other party members. And while Kender will do that, they actually tend not to steal valuable things. Like, they don't tend to steal gold. They don't tend to steal jewels. They tend to steal, like, shiny odds and ends, like forks, silverware, little interesting pieces of lint, feathers, things like that. Shoelaces. So if they're ever going to steal stuff, it should be kind of annoying, but nothing valuable. So it would always kind of reach a point in these Dragonlance games where they would get really frustrated with the Kender for stealing gold and treasure, and there would just be arguments, and nobody would ever walk out happy. People would also tend to want to play amalgams of various Dragonlance characters. Like, you'd always have one guy who wanted to play a brooding wizard who is very sarcastic to everybody and has a racking cough, and actually that was probably me most of the time. But they just never really went well. I don't think it's a very good setting, because it's a good novel series, but not a good D&D setting, because if you're not the main heroes, I don't think the game really focuses on you. It's the same reason why you rarely want to play a Lord of the Rings RPG, because unless you're actually dealing with one of the Rings of Power, you're not even peripheral to the story. You're just kind of sideshow, and nothing is really at stake. So it depends on when you're playing. When you've got the series set, if you're playing during the War of the Ring or afterwards, you got to have a DM who has a very clear idea of where he wants the story to go. And me personally, have never been able to come up with a setting that really works for either Dragonlance or Lord of the Rings or stuff like that. So I tend to play in the more generic campaign settings, or I do my own homebrew setting where I have a much easier time making up a story for that. But that's a big special effect there. That was actually kind of daring special effects for me at the time. That's about the limit of my creativity when it comes to camera tricks, because once again, I set that all up myself, so that was more an editing trick, but whatever. But yeah, I do tend to play D&D a lot. I try to play it every week because I love playing it. Most of the time, I'm DMing. I don't know why. I guess I just have a really easy time coming up with storylines, and people tend to like it. So some people are cut out to be DMs, some aren't. I think I'm one of the lucky few who actually can keep gamers' attention, keep them focused. And I really like doing it. So and I really like reading fantasy novels. So I always have a fresh store of ideas up there. I haven't had as much time to play as I'd like to, because games can take up to 4 to 8 hours, especially when you're on a roll, and that's a big chunk of time to devote to anything. When you've got a lot of work to do, especially videos, because I've been throwing myself pretty heavily into videos lately, and you've got to really schedule a huge block of time out of your schedule. So when you see people playing D&D, you may consider them not having much of a life, but I consider them being very devoted to a hobby they love, because they've got jobs, they've got work to do too, and so if they're willing to devote that major block of time, you really got to offer them a special experience, and so that's why I take DMing seriously.